Okay, welcome to the 13th common session of Sunoikis' Digital Classics 2016. Today we have a common session about translation alignment with different guests. We already talked about translation alignment in the previous common sessions when we talk about aligning text in the same language and also aligning objects and text for inscriptions, for example. But today we have a specific common session about translation alignment with Greek, Latin, and Arabic. And today our guests are Usama from Ain Shams University at Cairo and the University of Heidelberg, and Riccardo Strobino from Tufts University. You have the links to the YouTube channel and also to the class outline in GitHub, where you can find links, readings, suggestions, and assignments. So Usama and Riccardo, welcome to Sunoikis, and thank you for your contribution. So I think you can start, and I think that Usama will go first. Usama, you have to unmute yourself because I can't do that.
Thank you very much. You hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much for this. I will share my entire screen now, and probably will see my slides.
Yes, I can see them. It works.
Yeah, very well. So I will do it like this. So thank you very much for having me here. So as you said, we are talking today about the translation alignment between Greek, Arabic, and Latin. I'm very happy to do this with my colleague Riccardo from Tufts. So, an overview first of what we are going to tell you in this session. It's a general introduction, which will be done by me, about translation in general and translation alignment. What's the meaning of that? And then a general introduction about the translation movements between Greek, Arabic, and Latin, and this will be introduced by Riccardo. And how to use alignment editor, Riccardo will do this also, and then he will move to some practical example using Aristotle's posterior analytics, and I will conclude with some practical example using the poetics. So, for the introduction, what is a translation alignment? I will start with some terms here. Print culture, as you can see. So a parallel text is a text placed alongside its translation, or translation of course, and text alignment is the identification of the corresponding sentence, maybe paragraphs, in both halves of the parallel text. So you know, of course, the Lloyd Classical Library and many other examples which I will show you. So here we have an example from the print culture. We have here Greek and English translation alignment in or at the page level. Here you cannot say that it is, maybe they were trying to do it in the paragraph level, but anyhow, due to the limitations of the print culture, this was an advancement, I mean, for learning Greek or knowing this text. And also for the Greek-Arabic alignment, we did have also examples in the print culture. So you can see here a Greek-Arabic alignment, and actually not only at the word level, but also you can see interlinear display. But again, this is in the print culture, and you can see everyone who is able to read Arabic and have some basic knowledge of Greek can understand this in Archean, in Hologos, and he can knows what is in, which is fi in Arabic, Arche or Arche as you pronounce it in your country. So it is a bit the beginning, and in and so on. He can understand what is the meaning of every word and particle and pronouns here. So this was helpful, but again, static. You cannot change it. You cannot do anything. It was very helpful, of course, and still very helpful, but it's static. And another example from the print culture, which is a very famous one, you know, is this alignment of the Rosetta Stone. And at the beginning, there was an alignment of the Greek text, or the Greek noun Ptolemy and Cleopatra, with the corresponding noun in the stone, in order to identify in another level, in a phonetic level, which is a P, which is a L, which sign in the hieroglyphics is a P, is a T, is L, and this is how this great discovery had changed our perception and our knowledge about Egyptology. Without this translation, which is aligned or above each other, we would not have been able to decipher the Egyptian language. And this has come to be said the Rosetta Stone. Any Rosetta Stone is a code or something that with it you can begin a new knowledge. So, but in the print culture, you did have this for a long time. No one would involve it, of course, except the experts who knows these language. The results were not immediately available, and when it was available, it was not free, and so on. So, but this was, again, Rosetta Stone in Egyptology. It was an essential clue to a new field of knowledge. So now, turning to the digital culture, and we have now this digital corpus of Greek and Arabic studies, and this, you have translation alignment at the paragraph level of many texts, of which you will know a lot now from my colleague Riccardo. These texts are freely and easily accessible and also searchable. You can search them. It's not static, as I said. It's dynamic. And you can search, for example, I hope this is clear, but we will give you some clear example of this. Searchable, of course, on the paragraph level, but which is which? I have searched here for the fallacies, which is a very, it's not an Arabic word, it's just a transliteration of poiesis, the Greek word. So anyhow, you can search here, and you cannot identify which is which word it refers to. But of course, since I know it, I have searched for poiesis, so I have come with this. So now it's searchable, the digital age alignment, but with some challenges. But with some processing, these challenges are turned into chances. And this is what we are going to present to you today, which is Alpheus Translation Alignment Editor, which is customizable to every needs, and you can do it with every language. So this was just an introduction, but why translation alignment? Why we are doing translation alignment? There are many purposes for this, but the most important thing is that study of translation, styles, techniques, and other things, and of course for the teaching purposes, which is very powerful tool in the classroom, as I said, in the vocabulary, how to translate, which style you should use, which technique you should use, and all these things. Just like the tree banking, which is also good in the research and also good in the classroom. So translation, what is translation? Translation is actually rendering something in the source language into the target language. So why this was necessary? Because there is a gap, a cultural, lexical, whatever the gap, but the necessity of translation arises from that gap. So we have a source language, we have a translation, the T here refers to the translation, and we have a target language. And now we can see that we are talking about Greek, so classical Greek was a source language, and then translated into Arabic, classical Arabic, which is a target language, and then Arabic was, and Greek, of course, classical Greek, have become, the two of them have become source languages for the medieval Latin, and then for the medieval Latin, Greek, Arabic, classical Arabic became source languages for all the people, you know, for the Italian, for the French, for the German, for the English, and for the modern Arabic. And maybe after these languages disappear, this language will be a source language for the other generation that will come. So now I have finished this introduction, and I think we could move to our colleague in Tufts.
So I shall unmute myself. Can you hear me, Monica? Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes, I can.
So I'm now going to share my screen. There you go. Let me know if you can see what I see. Is this working? Can you see me? Can you see the screen actually?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay. So I'll just run the presentation.
Perfect, it works.
Okay, great, great. Okay, thanks everyone for joining the call. I'm very happy to be here today and to be working with Usama on this. So there are three parts to my section. I will first say something about translation movements in general, in order, in a sense, to make this relevant not just to showcase the beauty of the tools that we're going to look at in a second, but also to make a larger case for their relevance in terms of historical research. So a few words on the pre-digital translation alignment world, if you like. Then we're going to look in the second part at how to actually align texts by looking at the editor, or the Alpheus editor, and then I'm going to close my section by showing you a couple of concrete examples of how this tool can be relevant for research purposes by looking at actual translations, medieval translations of a Greek text. Okay, so here, just to kick off, the images you see on the screen are, on the left-hand side, a Greek manuscript of Aristotle's logical work, The Prior Analytics. In the center, an Arabic translation of it, and on the right-hand side, a translation of Euclid's Elements, done in the 12th century. All these are, in a sense, representative pieces of what I'm going to say in the next few minutes. Okay. So there are two main translation movements that are relevant to our story, historically speaking as well, in terms of transmission of Greek science, philosophy, and culture, generally speaking, to the modern era. So there is a first translation movement of Greek into Arabic that takes place in the 8th to 10th century, and there are various stages, as we'll see, that this is how the bulk of Greek science and philosophy was transmitted from Greek antiquity to the Arabic-speaking world. And there's another translation movement which is central to this story, which is from Greek and Arabic into Latin in the 12th century mainly. We'll look at this in a second. So when we talk about the Greek into Arabic translation movement, we talk about something that took place in this geographical setting that you see represented on this map of the Abbasid Caliphate around 750. And there are just a couple of points that I want to draw your attention to, namely the fact that on the left-hand side here you see that Spain at the time was in its entirety under Islamic rule. Sicily wasn't yet. It was going to be like 150 years from then, around until from a little later than this until the late 10th century, and of course you have the whole East, modern-day Iraq and Iran under Islamic rule. Many of the texts were actually translated in the Baghdad region between the 8th and the 10th century CE. Okay, so there are several stages in this movement of translation from Greek into Arabic. There's an early translation activity which we may actually disregard for our purposes today, and then there's a second largest period from the 8th to the 10th century, as I said, which is in itself divided into three main phases. The first phase that goes from 830 to 850, which coincides with the translation activity of the Circle of Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi is a major figure in the history of Arabic Islamic philosophies. He actually is the first main philosopher writing in Arabic, and in his circle, his pupil, his students, his collaborators produced the first important translations of Greek philosophy works in Arabic. There is then a second phase from the 850s onwards, which is characterized by the translation activity of a translator, a Syriac translator called Hunayn ibn Ishaq, who died in 873, who focused mainly on the translation of scientific works, particularly medicine. He translated Galen, for instance, and this activity was carried on by his son Ishaq, who died in 911 and who was also a translator of philosophical texts. The first translation of the work we're going to focus on later today, the posterior analytics, was done from Greek into Syriac by this guy, Ishaq. And then, in the third phase, in the 10th century, 1900s, we have a third phase of translation which coincides with the activity of a circle of Aristotelian scholars, mainly active in Baghdad. The two names stand out here, that of Abu Bishr Matta ibn Yunus, whom we will encounter again in a few minutes, and that of Abu Nasr al-Fahabi, who is the second main philosopher active in this tradition, who was not a translator himself, but rather a commentator who wrote commentaries on many Aristotelian works. And these two figures are at the center of the so-called circle of Baghdadi Aristotelians. So in a sense, these phases are characterized by different needs and different sort of demands for different kinds of texts. In the Kindi circle, for the most part, texts that are related to the Neoplatonic tradition. In the Hunayn circle, for the most part, scientific and medical texts. In the Baghdadi Aristotelian circle, for the most part, Aristotelian texts by Aristotle himself. So again, the two main figures are Abu Bishr Matta and al-Fahabi for our purposes today. And what these people were trying to do was, on the one hand, produce as faithful as possible translations of Aristotelian works, not just summaries, and this is at the basis of a thriving commentary tradition that starts in the 10th century and goes on for centuries in the Arabic Islamic world. So some takeaways for the Greek into Arabic translation movement are the fact that almost every single text that has survived and was available to scholars in this tradition in the Greek sciences and Greek philosophy, not literature, not history, but mainly scientific and philosophical disciplines, was translated from Greek into Arabic. That was generated by the demands of different social and cultural groups. It takes place between the 8th and 10th century for the most part. Geographically centered in Baghdad and characterized by a number of different and complementary motives. All right, so the second bit in this story is a subsequent phase, which takes place in an entirely different, well, not completely different context, but geographically complementary context. And we're talking about the movement of translation from Greek and Arabic into Latin. So here, another map that will help us locate this geographically. This is a representation of Europe in 1135, and if you remember the slide that I showed a few seconds ago with the map of the Abbasid Caliphate, one main difference that you can see on this map on the left-hand side is that Spain, at this stage, is no longer entirely under Islamic rule. The part under Islamic rule is the one here in the south and in the east, but there are some parts that are now have been regained by Christian kingdoms. And the important thing is, if you can read here the name of this town, Toledo. So it is crucial that the translation, for the translation movement from Greek and particularly from Arabic into Latin to arise at this stage, that it happens in this particular geographical place, which is at the intersection of these two worlds. So that means availability of manuscripts, availability of people who spoke the two languages and could read the two languages, in this case Latin and Arabic, and could actually produce, and also a social demand for texts. There was a famous cathedral school in Toledo where people actually needed to recover this the ancient philosophical and not just philosophical scientific tradition and have it available in their own language, in Latin. So transmission in this case from Greek to Latin through the mediation of Arabic, but it's not only the case in Spain, it's also the case in Sicily. If you look here, Sicily at this stage is no longer, so when the previous slide that we looked at, it was not yet under Islamic rule. Now it is no longer under Islamic rule. It has been under Islamic rule for about a century and a half, as I pointed out earlier, and this is another point, major point of contact, where there are communities of people speaking both languages, and there is demand for translations that were only available in Arabic at that stage from Greek, demand for translation into Latin now. And then there is so this is one part of the translation movement from Arabic into Latin. There is another leg, another section of the story, if you like, which is a translation movement from Greek, so from the original Greek texts into Latin, which occurs because there had been a resurgence, if you like, of trade activity and cultural exchange between Venice and Constantinople. So there is a guy that we'll mention in a second, James of Venice, who was active in the 12th century and has access to manuscripts in Constantinople and begins to translate texts from Greek into Latin. So two parts in this case to the story. So again, we have several stages. And the Latin translation movement into Latin, an early phase, which for the most part coincides with the activity of Boethius in late antiquity, at the end of the 5th and beginning of 6th century. And we have a central phase, which is what we usually mean when we talk about translation movement from Arabic and Greek into Latin, 12th and 13th century, which coincides or actually is fostered by, particularly in the 13th century, with the rise of university in Western Europe. And then a later phase where translations continue in the Renaissance, 15th and 16th century, but we're not going to be concerned with that today. So some names that are relevant for our story today are those of a guy called Gerard of Cremona, was active between 1114 and 1187, and was part of the school of Toledo that I mentioned a second ago. He was a renowned translator of Aristotle and scientific works, and one of the work that I'm going to focus on later on, the Posterior Analytics, was translated by Gerard in the middle of the 12th century. And then, as I mentioned, James of Venice, important representative of the tradition of translation directly from Greek into Latin, sort of activity is flourishing between 1125 and 1150. Oh, and just to give you a close-up of the geography of the Toledo school, some images of the cathedral school in Toledo and of the city. Okay, so we're done with the historical part. We can now move on to how this actually works. So how do we do alignment? Well, I'm going to show you some stages in the process, and the way I do it is by using the Perseids environment. So I'm assuming here that at this stage we all know how to log in onto Perseids, and we are on the first page, one's homepage, where you find all the different things that we've been working on. So you begin a new text alignment by just clicking on in a pretty self-explanatory way on new text alignment. So here's what you get. You get a page like this in the Alpheus editor, where you can add title and text, and there are two ways in which you add texts in these two boxes here, where you will have the source text and the target text, so one translation, one text and its translation, or two translation, what have you. There are two ways in which you can add text. You can either select from the texts that are available in the system. So for instance, I think in Usama's case, the Poetics was one of those that were available. You have a bunch of authors, mainly Greek and Latin literature, that you can select from, but if, like I needed to do, your text is not in the system, you can paste it directly in the boxes here. So this is what it looks like once you, well, sorry, I will show you in a second what it looks like. So for instance, I took the texts I wanted to work on from the digital corpus for Greco-Arabic studies that Usama showed you a second ago. So there you have, if you're interested in aligning Greek with Arabic, a number of classical Arabic texts, both in philosophy and science, authors like Fahabi or Nairizi, who's a commentator of Euclid's Elements, or ancient authors like Alexander of Aphrodisias, Apollonius, mathematician, or Aristotle. So I was interested in aligning bits of text from the posterior analytics, a text I'm going to say something about later in the third phase of my section. I took the text from here, so you just go here in this icon, and this is what it looks like. So this text, which is not the one that we're going to look at, we're going to look at chapter 1.6. This is the beginning of the book, chapter 1.1. Actually is already in and of itself an alignment, but it is an alignment of a very coarse-grained level. It is an alignment at the chapter level, so there isn't anything you can do really in terms of associating sentences or words within this chapter. You have to do it yourself. At this stage, the only alignment we have is just one that gives you the two parallel chapters, but nothing more specific than that. And this is what I was interested in doing. Okay, so we assume now that we've done this intermediate step, selected chapter 1.6, and then we copy a few lines from the beginning of the chapter and paste it in the two boxes. So the Greek text on the one hand and the Arabic text on the other hand. So one thing that I just suggest for practical purposes is that you give a relevant title to your file. So usually the way I go about it is just to give author, work, chapter lines, source and target language, particularly when you're dealing with multiple alignments that involve alignment of translations of the very same passage across multiple translations, maybe multiple Latin translations, multiple Arabic translations, as we'll see in a minute. So this is what it looks like. You click on Align, and then you get first this picture here, up here, the before, and what we're going to look at is how to get to the after, so to the align text. The text when you start is all highlighted in this slightly orangish or reddish color, so that means that nothing has been aligned yet. At the end of the process, where everything, hopefully, or at least for the most part, the text has been aligned with the translation, you will have the aligned bits, words or sentences in black, and those that haven't been aligned for any reasons, you didn't have time to do so, or maybe more significantly, because there wasn't anything to align a certain expression or word in the target language with one in the source language. In that case, the corresponding parts in the text remain non-black, i.e. orange. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So this is the text we start with. I promise you that you won't have to do it in Arabic with me now, but we'll look at least an alignment of a Greek and Latin text. So there you go. So when you begin, you select a word in one of the two languages. Let's suppose we're starting with the main word in this chapter, episteme, science. This is what the chapter talks about, the conditions that need to be fulfilled in order for a certain argument to be scientific. So you click on this word, and then you click on the corresponding word in the other language, scientia, and you see that with this interlinear viewing mode, there are two ways in which you can look at the texts. I personally recommend using the interlinear viewing mode because it gives you a way to track what you're doing while you're doing it, because it's very easy to mess things up by clicking multiple times, and in this case sometimes the previous word is carried over and you have to then undo and go back to the original selection. But the easiest example is just to click on one word and associate it with the corresponding word in the other language. Of course, it can get more complicated than this. For instance, a first layer of further complication involves aligning two words in one language with one word in the other. Of course, in Latin we don't have the definite article, but in this particular case, the Latin translates the whole expression with the article, the feminine article in Greek. So in this case, the way to do this is just to start with episteme, click on scientia to associate this word with this word, and then to click back on the article he to associate the expression episteme to the definite article. So it's a process that works by trial and error, but I can promise you that with some practice it works well. So you can go on, for instance, associate A, the conjunction A with the C in the Latin, un with igitur. You can associate the single word auton here with two words in the Latin, the ipsis, or the phaneron here with manifestum est, because again in the Greek we don't have the copula of the verb. And again, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that your best friends in this context are the undo button if you happen to associate elements incorrectly, and a lot of practice. Well, not really a lot of practice. I mean, I think with a few hours you can really get through how this works, and especially if you use the interlinear viewing mode, it's really easy to become skilled very quickly. Okay, so a couple of further comments. If you ever happen to need to modify the XML, the underlying XML file, for instance, this happens if you happen to have, say, mistype or miscopied, or you just realize that one word in one of the two languages is just wrong and you need to change it, then one way to do it that I know about and that I've used is to go back to the home page, to go on the translation alignment box here, select it. This brings you to this other page where you can edit the alignment in XML, and this is what it looks like when you click on this link. So it opens up a box with an XML file, and you have to just scroll through the various lines. You see here that you have a system that sort of univocally associate every bit of word with a particular tag, if you like, and you can go within the text environment here and actually change it in the Greek or in the Arabic or in Latin, what have you. It's particularly effective and easy when it is only one word. I don't really know how easy it is if you have to change longer chunks of texts. It can be done, but it's probably it just requires a little more time, and it's a little more resource expensive. So we finally get to the stage, the after slide. So this is what a fully aligned text looks like in the interlinear viewing mode. You have every bit or almost every bit of Greek aligned with every or almost every bit of Arabic, and as you see, there are one-to-one alignments like anakaion with tohuria. You have one-to-many alignment, like the ga translated as wadalika anna in Arabic, which is a complex expression involving 3 words, and you have many-to-many words alignment, like the tade sumbebe kota at the end of the passage, which is actually translated in Arabic by a noun followed by a relative clause, wala shi'a allati bil arad, which means something like the things that are by accident, rather than the accidental things in the Greek. So different combinations of alignment that you can produce: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many.
Riccardo, I have one question for you.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know Arabic, but I can read the Greek text. So it's interesting from this slide that you could align everything except for one particle, de, in Greek, and then, of course, the punctuation that usually in Alpheus we separate from the text with the space. So this is interesting. So you could align everything, because this is one of the challenges of translation alignment. Sometimes you can align everything. You decide to align everything, aligning, I don't know, one word with more words in another language. So can you say something about this example? So I can read only the Greek, but in the Greek I see that everything is aligned.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So there are several things that can be said, and I think some will be relevant for the concluding part of my section in a few minutes. But I'm just going to say this. So I tried to be as honest as I could here. So I tried to ask myself every time a question as to whether what I was aligning was actually the correct way of aligning particular kind of text in Arabic. So there are some challenges that are peculiar to Arabic. For instance, Arabic doesn't have a copula. usually. So you don't have the verb to be as a copula in many cases. So in that case, what do you do, for instance, if you have esti in the Greek? Do you align it just with the predicate in Arabic or with the verb? What do you do? So this would bring us to something that I think Usama will say at the end. I've used a grain of salt in aligning this. So the reason why this aligns so perfectly is that it's a very, very literal translation of the Greek text. So it aligns well because it is actually almost it's not a one-to-one, it's not even a one-to-one correspondence as you can see, but it's a very literal rendering of the text in Arabic. There is some noise, as you can see down here, some expressions that aren't really alignable to anything in the Greek, but for the most part it's a very literal translation, so that accounts for this nice symmetry and the clean character of this image that you have before you. But what I want to stress, and I think what Usama will also talk about, is that we really need guidelines. I think maybe there are guidelines. I'm very new to this, but I think I suspect there aren't for Arabic. We need guidelines to account for all these cases that you mentioned, Monica, and for achieving some kind of uniformity, more or less in the same way that this is advocated in free banking. So we really need a way to account for systematic differences among languages, and we really need to know how to proceed, for instance, in obvious cases when you have copula that are not copulae that are not in one language but are in the other, or certain adverbial expression. So I think it's all about producing guidelines that can really make the process more systematic and less arbitrary.
Yes, we don't have guidelines, Riccardo, and this is one thing, but we need, before writing guidelines, at least I can speak for Greek and Latin and other languages, not for Arabic, but we need them. Of course, we need to produce a lot of data, because as you can see, you need to try and then to see how far we can go with the guidelines and how much a translator can be free to choose. So this is still, I think, a problem in the sense that we want guidelines, but I don't know if we can have guidelines for everything. But I think this is a very interesting example. So definitely we need guidelines, but before we need to produce data, we need to experiment a lot with this.
I agree. I'll give you two more quick examples to further answer your question. So if you see here this word, can you see my mouse here moving the arrow?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this word, the uk, the negation in Greek, corresponds to the word lyset in Arabic, which is not just a negation, it's a verb. It's a verb that expresses a negation, if you like. So is that what really corresponds in the Arabic to the uk? Well, in a sense, obviously it is, but it literally, what you would want there is something like uk esti, right, in order to have a really one-to-one correspondence. But I think the safest, the more cautious, more conservative approach is in this case to align the negation with what plays exactly the same function in the corresponding language. So it's a word by word in the sense that it's an ad sensum alignment, if you like. And another example I have here, for instance, is this expression. So the anankaya that you've got. Sorry, just lost this. Where is this? There you go. So the ananke huparkein in the middle of the third sentence, can you see here? So this is aligned with two Arabic word, yalzam daruratan, which means it follows necessarily. It is necessarily true that something is the case. So here it is an alignment of one word in the Greek with two words in the Arabic, which could have been rendered by two Greek, could have corresponded to two words in the Greek, but I think it's fair to align the two words in the Arabic with this single expression in the Greek, because that's what it translates really. So if you didn't do that, you would convey the impression that the Arabic is saying something different than the Greek, which is not the case in this particular situation. Okay, so much for it. I will just now move to the third part and quickly go through a couple of examples. So The text that I chose, because I'm very interested in it, is the Posterior Analytics, which is a section of the Organon, the set of Aristotle's logical works, which covers the topic of what scientific knowledge is and what demonstration is. It consists of 2 books. The first one is in 34 chapters, and the second one is in 19 chapters. It was translated twice into Arabic. There is a very famous translation by this guy, Abu Bishr Yunus, that I mentioned earlier on in the talk. And then there is another, slightly later, anonymous translation, which is probably a rewording of Matta's translation in a more paraphrastic fashion, if you like. So it's a rendering of this very early literal translation of the Greek, actually through Syriac. Matta translated a Syriac text, but we can forget about this for a second. The anonymous translation is a more, attempts to be more elegant than Yunus. So 2 translations into Arabic, 2 translations for our purposes into Latin. There are actually more, but we won't look at those. One by Gerard of Cremona, one of the characters I've mentioned earlier, who translated the work in the mid-12th century in Toledo. And Gerard's translation is done from the anonymous Arabic translation. It's crucial to keep that in mind, and I'll show you why in a second. And then another Latin translation by James of Venice, the other character mentioned earlier, working in the middle of the 12th century, done from the Greek. So, Greek text, 2 Arabic translation, Abu Bishr and the Anonymous, 2 Latin translation, 1 from the Greek, the other from the Arabic anonymous translations. Why is this important? Oh, let me sort of visually represent this. This is one image taken from a 1950s critical edition of Gerard's Latin translation, and in the good old-fashioned way of traditional critical editions, the preface is in Latin. So this diagram is also, this chart is also in Latin. It tells us there is a Greek text at the origin. There is a partial Syriac translation, a full Syriac translation by Ishaq, another character mentioned earlier. There is a translation done by Abu Bishr Matta into Arabic from the Syriac, which is still very literally close to the Greek. Then there is this anonymous translation, which is a reworking of Matta's Arabic. The Latin translation by Gerard in the 12th century, done on the anonymous, and then this other translation into Latin from the Greek by James of Venice. So 3 texts, the Greek, the Arabic, and the Latin by James on the one hand, and 2 texts on the other hand, the anonymous and the anonymous Arabic translation and Gerard's translation. So why are they in different colors? Well, because they are very different. Actually, if we align, and this is something that the alignment really helps us understand in a very visual and clear way, it is fair to say that all this work had already been done pretty digitally by the editor of the Latin translation, but it is now very easy to see it in a better and clearer way, and you can actually, for instance, make these results accessible to students in a way that would otherwise be very difficult to achieve with traditional methods. So what I'm going to show you now is how the texts align. So if you align the Greek text with Abu Bishr Matta, you can see that with the exception of some expressions here, these longer expressions, you don't have to worry about these shorter ones. They could actually be aligned with the rest of the text. So it looks worse than it actually is. So basically only this expression is not perfectly aligned with the Greek. So Greek and Abu Bishr, the first Arabic translation, align perfectly. Look at the Greek and the Latin translation done from the Greek. They are literally identical. So here you have a one-to-one perfect alignment. If you do it in the editor live, it's just fun to see how you can basically do it word by word by clicking on one word and proceeding, and you almost never find an obstacle, so to speak. So those align very well, these 3 texts. So this shows that these relations are hold, if you like. And then let's look at the others. Well, take a look at how, if you want to do this sort of ideal exercise and compare Abu Bishr's translation, so the translation from the Greek through Syriac, with Jared's translation, which is a translation from the Anonymous, so the other Arabic. So look at how badly they align here. I mean, this is really a different text than this one. There are so many expressions, so many parts of sentences that are not shared. So, and this is obviously the case because Jared's translation is a translation of a different text. Which one? Of the Anonymous. Look down here. Look at how perfectly these will align. In the same way in which Abu Bishr's texts used to align with James of Venice's, right? The previous slide. So on the one hand, Greek, James, and Abu Bishr. On the other, the Anonymous Arabic translation and Jared, almost identical. So that's my point. Just one thing I wanted to point out before handing it back to Usama is how can you see what aligns with what exactly? Well, if you go to the AlphaUS editor and use the non-interlinear viewing mode, you just move the cursor, move the arrow on a word in either text, and it will just show you, it will highlight the corresponding word you aligned it to in the other language. So this is the alignment of episteme, which we aligned with scientia in the Latin translation earlier on. Well, this is aligned here with the Arabic word al-aim, and as you see, you have the word here with the article that aligns with word plus article. And you can also do it in the interlinear mode, which is also cool because it gives you the whole alignment. This is the Anonymous translation on the top half and the translation by Jared into Latin in the bottom half. And you can see actually how nice you can detect correspondence between, say, 2 words here and 3 words in the Latin and so on. So I think that's it for my part. I'll hand it back to Usama. Hopefully I didn't take too much time.
Thank you, Riccardo. That was very interesting. And sorry for interrupting you, Monica, but this is actually very interesting, and I could stay all the day saying about the guidelines and all these things. So,
all right.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. So now, since we don't have so much time, I should wrap up here. So this is the editor. And I will skip this because this is another way in order to get into the editor, which is I do like to work with, which because of the color contrast. And you can go here and go to AlphaUS Translation Alignment Editor, and you will get the editor. But again, this will not be good as if you looked in from Mercedes. Because Mercedes, you will have the whole things, and you can put titles and save it and do it as you work. But anyhow, this is just for these slides in order to show to give a sort of a color contrast, which is different. Here, I just want to talk about the non-triviality of this task. I mean, alignment is not an easy task. You make many choices, as Riccardo said. About which align to which, and this is basically the main tasks, the main choices that the translator has introduced to his text. As you can see, this is a quote from the Wikipedia, and the last sentence says, during translation, sentence can be split, merged, deleted, inserted, or reordered by the translator, because it is not a non-trivial. So, for example, I will give you this visualization of how these sentences are reordered. Legomen in the Poetics,
Usama,
in the Arabic.
Sorry,
yeah.
we lost your slides. I think you have to share again the screen.
Okay, I will do it again. So I will go back. Yeah, I see that you lost me. So I will do it, share. Thank you for reminding me. I hope you see me now. Yes?
Yes, I can see the
Wonderful.
slide.
So I will make it more clear. Now I will continue. So I think I was talking about how legomen in the Arabic text has been reordered and split and been merged in another sentence. So legomen here on the left-hand side is aligned with inna mutakallimun, and the first sentence, and then the first phrase and the second phrase wa mukhbiruna, and even in another sentence وكذلك نتكلم ونتكلم. So the translator, he has made this choice. So this is the power of this editor, because alignment at the phrase level, you can see which choices he has made. For the peculiarity of Arabic, alignment at the word level, Greek preposition align with Arabic preposition unless this is attached to other noun. So peri is aligned with fi. So you can know that fi, this sign, is peri and is about in Greek, and also about sorry about that. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, you will see alignment at the word level. So you have Greek word aligned with two Arabic words, and actually this word is poetics, is aligned with Sana'at al-Shu'ara. So if you look at Sana'at al-Shu'ara, it is the art of poets in English. If you do the back translation, which every translator do that, will say ton poeton. So if you go back to the Greek translation, this does not correspond with this Sana'at al-Shu'ara. So maybe you could do something like this in the edition of the translation, to put it between curly brackets to indicate that they are alternation done by the editor, and meaning that the two letters should not have been there, because Sana'at al-Shar, because al-Shar is the poetry in English, and very poetikis, which is the corresponding one. So through the alignment editor, or through this reflection, you can do some changes. And also, the last thing that I want to end with is another problem, another peculiarity of the Arabic. Alignment at the word level. Arabic word was 5 Greek words, as you can see. Even if you don't know Arabic, you can see in the right-hand side, وَأَنْوَاعُهَا is aligned with te, kai, toni, ton, tes. And if you do the interliner display, you can see that it is repeated, te وَأَنْوَاعُهَا, which is not correct. Kai وأنواعها, which is also not correct, and this is what you have in the XML file, and so on. So I think this is how it is really should align. Arabic element وأنواعها is 2 elements actually, or 3, but now 2. Wa, which is correspond to kai or kai, and أنواعها, which is toni, don, or tes in Greek. So we could do it like this, you know. Before you push the button align, you could, after you copy and paste your text, you could make a space between وأنواعها, and for teaching purposes, for example, in order to show your students what is that. Where is tekai, and again أنواعها, and which align with te, don, or tes, which aligns with 3 elements. And even further, you could break this down and do where was tekai, and then you separate anwa', which is actually aligned with idun, and you separate also the ha, which is a pronoun which also align with autate. So and at the bottom you can see that the interlinear display has where te kai, which is actually the real alignment, and then idun and wa' and ha was aligned with autate, and this way you will have a very good alignment and in the XML file, because if you want to search for wa or tekai, what is the corresponding in Arabic, or you search for anwa' and what is the corresponding in Greek, or for the pronoun ha, what is the corresponding element or word in the Greek. So I think this would be very interesting, And I do this personally, and I recommend it for teaching purposes and also even for research purposes. If we as you have seen, I have given you how we can search in the digital corpus, but you cannot search for alignment of sentence or couple of sentence or words. So, and with this example, I think we have reached the end of our session. Sorry for our presentation today. So.
No, thank you very much, and we are definitely on time. So one thing, yes, so guidelines is the first thing we need, definitely. And then, as you mentioned now, we need to add annotations to what we align. We have to see how we can do that. In Perseus is possible to produce annotations, short commentaries when you annotate something. So this is a possibility so that the translator can explain his or her decisions. But I think we can also add specific annotations to a certain word, as for the examples you showed, or in the XML, or in the XML files, because behind the alignment, of course, we have an XML file, or with other kinds of annotations where you explain exactly your decision, especially if we want to use this tool also for students, for pedagogical purposes, because we know that one of the goals of Alpheus is to use these tools for learning languages. I don't know Arabic, but I can try to use these alignments starting from Greek or Latin and try to identify the Arabic words. This is a possibility. I know that it works for other languages, but in this case, of course, we have to be very precise explaining the students, or in general the learners, the meaning of the word. So yes, so we have two important needs: guidelines, and then how to add annotations to Alpheus. So thank you very much for these great examples. So questions, are there questions? We have people in the Hangout. Please, do you have questions?
May I ask a question myself?
Oh, yes, of course.
to yourself, or?
I was just thinking about this, and Gabby and of course Monica know about that we do have in papyri.info every change that has been entered in the XML file is there. So are we in a way in the alignment and translation alignment in a way moving into something like this? Because it will be very interesting, because I can see that I did it like this, but anyone who is doing for another purpose will use this text and do it in another way and say no, this anwa'uha does not align with all these. I will align with this, and all these things are just to go away, or is there any way to keep this in the XML file, every change done to this? So
well, Gabby, yeah, maybe Gabby can say something. Yeah,
I was going to say I assume because Perseus is built on, or the workflow part of Perseus is built on Sosol, right? And Sosol assumes a Git repository backend. So presumably there is version control there, and so all the changes are preserved. It's a question of surfacing those in a human-friendly way, as papyri.info does, but I'm not aware that Perseus currently does, but could do if that was a desideratum, and I would agree with Usama that it is very important.
Yes, this is a desideratum, and this is not the first time we see this desideratum. Of course, there are many other things to implement within Perseus, but of course, then we have to see. Of course, we can keep track of the contribution of different editors, but I don't know how we can in the XML mark up something like this. I don't know this. So there are we have possibilities. So I think we have to discuss this. So, and this is important for people working specifically on Alfeo. So we definitely need to put this on the list of current desiderata. Okay, there is a comment in the chat by Anise. Yes, Anise, I know that, yes, you will talk, Anise will be part of, will teach in another common session, and yes, for aligning Greek and Portuguese. And so we will see similar needs, because of course we have this for also for other languages. And I know that Anise is working on a digital version of Greek-Portuguese dictionaries, and there again we have the same needs. So, yeah.
Can I ask another question myself?
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, so I think going back to the issue that Usama highlighted at the end of his talk, when you have, I mean, Arabic is not a particularly agglutinating language, but at least in the case of certain particles, conjunctions, and pronouns, you do have words that attach, combine together in a single compound. So one way to go about this is just to align the single unit in the Arabic to the multiple words it corresponds to, usually articles or possessives or conjunctions, and do that without worrying too much, if you like, by doing the association this way. But another way that I think would be a useful thing to have, but I have no idea how and if it could be achieved, is to have a way, non-visible in the sense of what Usama showed, because Usama showed to us a way to separate out the words in the Arabic, but that doesn't look like, I mean, it is not correct Arabic. It is not how you would do it in an Arabic text. You don't have the possessive pronoun, say, at the end, detached from the word it goes with. You really want to see it together, but it would be nice if we had an invisible layer where it is separated and where we can actually account for, in this way, the different individual associations, say the possessive with the word that corresponds to the possessive in the other language, and the noun itself. So I wonder whether there's a technical way, I have no idea, whether people think that it would be valuable to have something like this.
Couldn't you just do this by editing the XML behind the text so that you break it into two words? I mean, this is artificial, but you don't put a space between them. So you have wa and then no space and then another word. So you can assign. So on the page, you don't see spaces, but but you associate the words rather than the entire cluster.
That's exactly what I have done.
Elegant trick. Yes. But it didn't look like you did that, Usama, in your example.
No, I did it in two ways. One way is just which is a simple way. Before you push the alignment that I have said, that what I have said to all the students here, or anyone who's participant, you can split it before you push the align. Or, as Gabby said, you can go into the XML file and begin to split it. But the problem here is that when you hit the align button, you have an aligned XML file. That means that every sentence will be counted. So وأنواعها is just counted as number 10. If you separate it into 3 parts, you will have to go into every consecutive sentence and change the number, because the sentence is in 25 elements, because the XML file is 25 elements. So you have to go, when you have a long sentence, 50 elements, so you have to change this again, you know? So it is a very time-consuming task if you do it. If you go into the XML file and begin to do it, because you have to go to number every sentence, every part you do it. Suppose that you want to separate وأنواعها, and you separate al-fawasis. So to al and then fawasis. So and go on. So it's a very tedious, time-consuming.
But this is a workflow issue. I think we can think of technical solutions to this. I mean, one solution would be to make it work a lot more quickly than what you're describing. Would be to first use your simple method and add spaces, and then that goes through, creates the words, numbers them, and then just remove the spaces. And that's
this is wonderful. This is wonderful because
but the other way is to have Perseids, a future generation of Perseids, have a slightly more sophisticated way of numbering that allows you to split words in the interface, or that allows you to split what let's call them morphemes, so you can break particles and various other things without it breaking words, and have Perseids handle that in the background. But there are solutions to this. The fact that something's a bit of a pain shouldn't stop us from doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
but this is very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this.
Yeah. It's wonderful to see this, and wonderful to see that there is a technical solution for this. I did it manually, and if there's, as you said, something we could do, which could be done automatically, this will be wonderful, because we will have an element-to-element Greek and Arabic, and we could use these XML files to produce a dictionary, or to do the search, or to do everything. You search for the pronoun ha, and you will have all the Greek equivalent to this, which is wonderful.
And this would also be transferable to other languages that are even more agglutinating than Arabic. I mean, imagine you want to align a Turkish text at some point. In that case, you really want to have a tool that enables you to do this systematically. So if you could develop something along these lines, it would be great.
Yes, I agree with you, and this is why we need to produce alignment, to work with data, because this is a perfect example. So now we have concrete data, concrete problems, and so of course we will see when and how we can implement Alpheus and Perseids, but from a technical point of view, this is possible. But of course, in order to do that, we need data. So concrete examples, working on examples. And so, for example, for Arabic, you can start, well, not only working on guidelines, but on a list of needs and desiderata. This is what the Perseids community needs. And then, of course, step by step, they will implement that. But, well, Riccardo, you are at Tufts University, so
yeah,
you can go downstairs. And
my bit, I mean, I'm planning on doing the whole alignment for, I mean, this particular work. I'm interested in other works, so I think it's a perfect case study to have these Arabic and Latin parallel translations of the relevant Greek work that you're interested in. I mean, this seems to be designed. This seems to be a historical accident that seems to be designed to, in order for us to implement these tools on it. So I think it's worthwhile to pursue this. So data will come. In other words, that's what I'm.
I'm sure
what I'm saying,
about
Monica.
that. I'm sure, because Usama and you are working a lot, so I have no doubt.
Yeah. Greek and Arabic, we have the XML file now, so I hope that I could do something with the Greek and Arabic, and maybe this will done automatically, because we have talked about only the manual alignment, because maybe the automated alignment will work very well to make automated alignment, and we will have Greek and Arabic, and yes, I am happy to work on this, and I will try to figure out something to alignment a lot of texts, because now this is a digital age, and I'm very positive about that, and you all, of course.
Yes, we are. Of course, the thing is that well, it's a long work, because you have, in this case, to produce the data and the documentation. That's of course time-consuming, because you annotate, you align your text, but then of course you have to produce the documentation so that we can have this implementation within Perseids. But this is what we are working on. So this is really digital philology. Yes. Other questions, or we still have, well, 5 minutes?
well, I do have one, very silly one probably.
Yes.
But, so when you, so let's say, I'm just going to describe the experience I went through. So when I did this for this presentation, I just started by pasting, as I said, these bits of texts, right? So this produces the nice XML file. Question is, if you then say want to add the rest of the chapter to that particular file that you started working on, I mean, maybe this is entirely trivial, but I don't know how to do it. I mean, how do you attach new text to an already existing file? Is that possible? Can you do it? Because there doesn't seem to be an obvious way to do it from the interface on the current per se system, as far as I can tell. I mean, you can just sort of recall the alignment that you've worked on and paste the new text in that. So does anyone know how to do it? Whether it's just you better select your text carefully at the beginning, or what is the...
Well, as far as I know, this is still an issue in the sense that now, in the past, we had limits for the numbers of words, but now I think you can paste a long text. If you want to, that's the problem, because if you want to correct the text or add a new portion of text, I think that you have to begin the whole thing. If you want only to add a text, you produce a new, you can't have the whole text in your screen, so you will divide it. So the best thing is to save the first portion of text you are working on, and if you want to add after it something else, you can reopen the window and paste the new text.
Okay.
But I don't know if you want to add a portion of text within the text you have. This is maybe the question. I don't know. In this case, I think...
No.
Okay.
No, I was just thinking of adding consecutive chunks, let's say.
And so given that there are numbers for each chunk of text, you can add a new text, a new portion of text with the alignment. So in the end, you will have a list of chunks of text with a sequential number.
But let's say that ideally, if the system can handle the amount that you have to work on, let's say, I mean, chapters in this particular works that I'm working on are like at most 50 lines. If it can handle that, it's better to start with the whole thing. In other words.
Yes,
so,
if you can work chapter by chapter, of course, this is the ideal thing, and then you will have different chapters. Of course, if you want to correct something, you have to restart, to start again. I know this is still an issue. And also with punctuations, for example, you have to be very careful. As I have seen, you put a space, because otherwise you have the word with the punctuation. I don't know, a Greek word with a comma. And then I don't know in Arabic how it works, but it's the same thing. So, and I know that there is some work also on punctuation, because this is important also for tree banking. So there are various things that we have to work on, but we need data, as you can see. So, and the list of issues and needs. One question. So now we have seen a translation alignment, but in these translations, in the Arabic, for the Greek, I mean, for translations from Greek into Arabic. So I don't know Arabic, so sorry for my lack of knowledge. But for the syntax, can you see traces of the Greek syntax in the Arabic text? I'm asking because I made an experiment a few years ago with a colleague working on Syriac, and we were working on the laments of the philosophers on the tomb of Alexander, and in that case the Greek text is lost. But as my colleague was telling me, in the Syriac text you can still see the Greek syntax, because the translator preserved the syntax, the word order. Can you? So I know that this is a big question, and we have 2 minutes.
Do you want to say something, Usama, on this?
I will say something interesting, because first I will go to the classical Arabic and say that no, I did not see that in poetics, and I have to say that in contrast to the good translation that Riccardo has showed us, his translation of the Poetics was very bad, you know, and he has been attacked on this from serify, and Riccardo knows all the story about that. And maybe this is one of the main reasons why the Arabs did not translate the literary texts, as Riccardo told us. Another thing is that in translating from Greek into Arabic, into modern Arabic, if you look at the Iliad, which has been recently translated by Ahmad Uthman and many scholars of Cairo University, which is wonderful translation, I have to say, in prose, because in Arabic we have two translations. One in verse, in Arabic verse, and it has been done 100 years ago, and a newly one in 2004 has appeared, has been published by the National Center of Translation, NCT, and actually done by professionals, Greek scholars, and I mean Egyptians, classicists, and they have done it very well, so that they have tried to keep the word order in the Greek, you know. So this is wonderful to see, and they have tried very hard in order to keep the word ordered and the subject and all these things in order to have a very true translation of the Iliad, and they have done a very marvelous work. As far as the translation from a classical translation, I think Riccardo can tell us about that more than me. You know.
So thank you very much. I know, well, this is a big question, I know, but it's, and so thank you, Usama, for summarizing that. So now, unfortunately, we have to end the common session, which was very, very interesting. So thank you, Usama and Riccardo, for your contribution and your participation. We have your class outline in GitHub, and I kindly ask you to add the slides. You can put the link or you can upload them in GitHub, and so that people can follow this interesting discussion. And please send to Percy your guidelines and the list of these issues and needs we have, because this is the kind of work that the Perseid community needs to implement the tools that we have. So now I have to end the common session. Thank you again. And thank you, and see you next Wednesday for another common session about name entities, annotation of place names. So see you all, and good night. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Monica.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Riccardo.